RIMS is global. Discover why 10,000 of your peers in more than 60 countries are part of the world's largest risk management community. Visit rims.org/membership to find the best membership for you and your organization. Public registration is open for RISKWORLD 2026, which will be held May 3rd through the 6th in Philadelphia. Visit rims.org/RISKWORLD to register. Coming to you from RIMS headquarters in New York, this is RIMScast, the official podcast of the Risk and Insurance Management Society. I am Justin Smulison, Business Content Manager here at RIMS, and your proud RIMScast host. This is episode 384, and we will be joined by one of my favorite RIMS Risk Management Magazine contributors, Joahua Gold, shareholder at Anderson Kill. I've known him for a while, but he's making his RIMScast debut to discuss marine and cargo risk. This is a timely one. But first, let's talk about virtual workshops, starting with the RIMS CRMP. The next RIMS CRMP exam prep course will be April 21st and 22nd, and then again June 9th and 10th. Links to registration are on this episode's notes. On to virtual workshops. On April 15th, we have a virtual workshop covering emerging risks, and that will be led by our good friend Joseph Mayo. Register today and strengthen your risk knowledge. RIMS members always enjoy deep discounts on the virtual workshops. And we've got RIMS webinars coming up on April 16th, Zurich, and World Travel Protection will present Navigating the New Global Risk Landscape, Lessons for Business Travelers in Unstable Times. Register for webinars at rims.org/webinars and through the links on this episode's show notes. And folks, for more RIMS content, head over to YouTube and subscribe to @RIMS Official Channel. There you will find video podcasts, RIMScast Canada video podcasts, and other informative and entertaining content from RIMS. And head over to www.rmmagazine.com for the Q1 edition of the Azbee-Award-winning magazine, RIMS Risk Management Magazine. We've got some more plugs coming up later. Let's get on with the show. Our guest today is a shareholder at the law firm Anderson Kill. You've seen his byline in RIMS Risk Management Magazine, and you have seen him on RIMS stages, both regionally and nationally and globally. I'm talking about Joahua Gold, and he is here to discuss marine and cargo risks generally, and because he will be co-presenting a session at RISKWORLD on May 5th called Do Not Let Your Cargo Claim Go Down with the Ship, Tips to Improve Marine Insurance Protection. He will present that alongside RIMS past president Lance Ewing. So we expect that global stage session to be highly attended. Joahua is here to give us a little bit of a preview of that session and talk about how cyber can intersect with marine and cargo risk and offer some practical risk management takeaways. And it was also fitting to have Joahua join me on the show because Law Day is coming up in the U.S. on May 1st. And as you will hear, he has been practicing law for 3 decades. So we'll find out what Law Day means to him in 2026. Let's get to it. Anderson Kill shareholder Joahua Gold, welcome to RIMScast. Okay. So I am joined by Joahua Gold of Anderson Kill. He is one of our favorite longtime contributors to Risk Management Magazine. He's been a great supporter of RIMS. He's been a panelist for years, but this is the first time that he's on RIMScast. Josh, it's so great to see you.
It's great to see you too, Justin. Thank you to RIMS, your organization. It's been an amazing system for us to reach out, share information, educate, be educated. So couldn't be prouder to be speaking at RISKWORLD 2026. Make sure that trademark's correct.
That's all good. And just to remind everyone, you've been writing on a variety of topics for us through the years, I believe from cyber all the way to marine insurance, which is what we're going to talk about today. Do you have a favorite risk management topic?
I think risk management in the realm of cyber is obviously fascinating because it is such a relatively new peril for many policyholders. Obviously, we've been living with computers and all the good and the bad that comes with computing for decades now, but I would say it's only in recent years where the risk management profession, the insurance industry, and the legal industry have really started putting some meat on the bones in terms of what the implications are, what the perils are, how insurance is going to respond, what the products are. And don't get me wrong, we are not at a point where all of that is fixed or cemented, but certainly we're seeing more and more of a framework for operating in that sphere. And it's fascinating, obviously, to see any kind of industry where you have the intersection of both technology, insurance, and law. And it all comes together for sure in cyber. And needless to say, both for better and certainly sometimes for worse, we're going to be living with these perils, and they may be getting more perilous, not less so, over the next few years before maybe we can start turning the corner.
Excellent. So we're not really going to talk too much about cyber today, although I'm sure that might make its way into the dialogue. We got to talk about what your session is all about. On May 5th at RISKWORLD, it's going to be called "Do Not Let Your Cargo Claim Go Down with the Ship, Tips to Improve Marine Insurance Protection." You're going to be presenting with former RIMS President Lance Ewing. So you've got the risk management perspective, you got the legal perspective, and let's just cue the audience in. You clearly submitted this session months and months ago, probably in 2025, that's my guess. And the conflict with Iran has just occurred just a couple of weeks ago, just started. So you clearly had your finger on the pulse of what could be happening in the world.
Yeah, no, there's no question. And let me say at the outset, I'm in the fortunate and rarefied position of doing both the newest thing in insurance and law, which is cyber, and then also doing the oldest thing in insurance and law, which happens to be marine, which hails back to Lloyd's coffee shop in London a few centuries ago. So yeah, I get to cover the spectrum, and I seem to be on either point of the spectrum in terms of most of my day-to-day focus. As much as I love cyber, I absolutely am intrigued with maritime insurance, maritime law.
Yeah.
It's very esoteric. It's very old, and it has special rules that if you don't deal with this type of insurance and this type of law on a regular basis, it can escape you. It can be challenging, and it could also be a trap for the unwary, especially on the policyholder side, since the insurance companies are typically very well versed in the lay of the land and the insurance rules and doctrines. I would say most policyholders much less so. So you do have that information imbalance. And one of the things we always look forward to is educating risk managers about this area. It's, again, so detailed, it's so different, and it is definitely, some might say, antiquated, or some other words for it, but let's just say it's a challenging area, and we couldn't have a better example of that with recent current events. So yes, Justin, I did submit the RIMS proposal last year before the hostilities got fully going in the past few weeks in the Middle East. I will say that as dangerous and harrowing as the situation exists right now in certain shipping lines and energy channels, we've seen examples of this in more recent times with drought conditions affecting the Panama Canal and those shipping lanes, right?
Yeah.
And we saw the Suez Canal freighter mishap where, the Suez Canal was shut down for some time while a full-on international engineering effort was launched to free that freighter, free up those shipping lanes in the Suez Canal. So we've had certainly some more recent examples of what disruptions look like. Obviously, the one we're dealing with presently, with a war that seems to be escalating at the moment, is going to present real challenges for both shippers and, of course, energy markets. And we're all watching that in real time.
Right. So you and Lance are maybe adding or revising certain elements of your presentation to reflect what's happening currently.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain fundamental points. We don't want to turn this into a solely social current event
Right.
discussion. We do want to be able to educate policyholders with principles that apply
Yeah.
for whether or not you're dealing with the Suez Canal situation, an Iranian conflict situation, or alternatively, you're just dealing with, modern day pirates who have stolen oil in, open water, or you've had thieves break into your warehouse stealing, high value merchandise. So we will certainly touch upon and emphasize certain points that I think are obviously highly relevant now with, detours, delays in shipping, downstream risk, obviously risk to certain types of cargo and the like. There's, all kinds of cancellations that are going on right now for certain war risk coverage and other marine insurance products. But, again, usually we're resilient people. We come through these events, but there can, of course, be a real aftermath, and we're not quite sure where we are as of this recording. And we'll, certainly know more come RISKWORLD in Philadelphia in May. But right now, we can only brace for the worst. And right now, we're looking to educate policyholders on all of these issues, including ones that'll be, front burner given the hostilities now.
Well, let's keep the education going. What makes marine insurance claims so unique compared with standard property or casualty claims?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, a few things that are different about marine insurance is sometimes the policy language is itself kind of cloaked in words of antiquity. Sometimes you'll see a marine policy that looks like your standard property all risk policy. And sometimes you'll see ones that talk about assailing thieves and barbatry of the master and all kinds of other, 17th century nautical terms and piracy terms. So
Swashbucklers.
lots of swashbucklers on the open seas, and we now have the modern day versions of them. But it's, again, just important to make sure you understand both the rights, protections, but also some of the obligations and the contingencies under insurance. I'll throw out just a taste of one right now, which is
Sure.
most marine insurance policies will have a 1-year provision that the insurance company will argue says if there's any fight over payment of the claim, the amount of the payment, the timing of the payment, that all has to be brought in a lawsuit commenced within 12 months of the loss event. And I'm sure for people that have never had to go through a complicated claim, I've got a full year. That's plenty of time. In the real world of claims adjustments, sometimes it's frustrating for policyholders, understandably, but these claims can take months and sometimes even years for resolution. And sometimes they don't get resolved without some level of coverage litigation, sadly, or perhaps some alternative dispute mechanism. So again, just one of the areas where most policyholders are not accustomed to seeing a 1-year kind of contractually based statute of limitations to bring a fight, but you don't want to be in a position where the insurance company is going to argue you may have forfeited your coverage rights, even if the claim was ultimately deemed covered if you didn't act in a certain amount of time. So that's one example where policyholders accustomed to dealing with CGL policies or D&O policies or cyber policies may not ever get into that realm because fortunately for them, they've never had that problem before. But it's a point of just being educated, knowing what the lay of the land is for policyholders in this arena when they're insuring goods, not only over open water, but in warehouses, on docks, on
Right.
wharves, right? Even sometimes inland trucking, as we've seen from a Supreme Court case some years ago, it can fall under a situation where it's governed by maritime federal law.
Let's talk about some upcoming RIMS events, starting with RISKWORLD. RISKWORLD 2026 will be held May 3rd through the 6th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. RISKWORLD attracts more than 10,000 risk professionals from across the globe. It's time to connect, cultivate, and collaborate with them. Booth sales are open now. General registration and speaker registration is also open right now. And marketplace and hospitality badges are now available. Links are on this episode's show notes, and be sure to check out rims.org for more information. Now, our guest today, Josh Gold, will be one of the session speakers at RISKWORLD. We are excited for him and also for our just announced closing keynote, NFL Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, Emmy-winning broadcaster, and entrepreneur, Michael Strahan. He will be on the main stage on May 6th. I'm super stoked. So if you're still on the fence, this is the time to smash that register button and hear from one of the all-time greats. And the RIMS Western Regional Conference will be held October 4th through the 7th in Seattle, Washington. Registration is open, and you can also submit a session. Visit rimswesternregional.com and the link on this episode's show notes for more information. We will have more plugs later. And now let's return to our interview with Joshua Gold of Anderson Kill. How has the definition of marine exposure evolved, or is that the way that it has evolved? And why should risk managers be thinking about marine insurance even when their cargo is moving inland?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great point, which is, and we know this from the cyber insurance world, and I think it's applicable to the maritime world, which is, don't ever get fooled by the title of your insurance policy. The devil is definitely in the details. It's in the fine print. And so even though I think, you still see policies labeled ocean marine cargo coverage, it may be that you're getting endorsements like something called a warehouse to warehouse endorsement, or you're buying a somewhat newfangled product called stock throughput. It's not that new, but compared to what they were selling in Lloyd's Coffee House on the back of a napkin, it is somewhat new. And so you're looking at coverages that may apply not just for cargo on a ship, not just for cargo being transported over waterways, navigable ways, but you're now looking at cargo that may be at rest, stored in a warehouse, or it's being loaded from the ship onto the dockside. So there's so many areas in which you do have to kind of be aware of things that are developing in the marketplace, and the fact that your insurance may now carry on well beyond the vessel's hull. So again, it's good to keep it in mind. There's a whole other area of marine liability coverage, which sadly may be implicated given the hostilities in the Straits of Hormuz. And perhaps elsewhere, given kind of the escalating nature of the conflict in the Middle East. So we will have to kind of see how much of that plays out. But I would just always recommend that policyholders, they're working with experienced insurance brokers. One of the privileges I have is giving this discussion in May with Lance Ewing, who is just an absolutely sensational, seasoned risk manager who's got, work on the brokerage side. He's got work on the insurance company side. And of course, he's got the policyholder focus as a risk manager. So he has every perspective. And one of the things we certainly will be doing at RISKWORLD is to make sure that not only do you hear from the coverage lawyer, myself, but you also are hearing from someone who is in the seat of most of the audience, right, that can speak to risk managers, tell war stories, tell what he is looking for, what is so important to his risk management approaches. And we hope that that's going to be useful for audience members, even if they're not in the same industry as Lance's business.
One never knows where they might end up next, where your next company is going to be, or what they might ask of you. So this is a great way to to become more well-rounded. And I wanted to harken back to something that you said. You mentioned endorsements, which can significantly expand protection. Could you name just a few of the provisions or endorsements that risk professionals should be looking for when evaluating their marine cargo policies?
Sure. I mean, you always want to take a look at the provision I mentioned before, which is the warehouse to warehouse endorsement. Your brokers typically can, if they're seasoned and they're really paying attention to you, and there are some great brokers out there, and there's some brokers that sadly just don't know this area as well as others, just because it is so rarefied and esoteric in many regards. So if you can find a broker that's well steeped in marine coverage, marine cargo, again, all depending upon your needs, they can often customize endorsements that are important to your business, right? If you're transporting goods that are capable of being spoiled or have to be refrigerated or have to be on a certain portion of the ship, right? Can they be above deck, right? Maybe cheaper. Do they have to be in the hull of the ship, protected from the elements? Those are all kinds of issues that can come up through endorsement, special policy provisions covering temperature controlled goods, right? Perishable goods. One of the things that's always risky, right, is electronics. Do electronics go in a ship? Should they be flown on air cargo instead? So there are all kinds of considerations that you're looking at. So I would say you probably want to have a system in which you have customized coverage wherever you can get it. And it's not to suggest the broker's writing the language, but the broker knows that, Lloyd's Marine Group has an example of an endorsement that covers a certain type of peril or a certain type of cargo. And that's quite useful. You might have a provision in your policy that might be part of a base form on some underwriters' products, or it might be by endorsement, but you might want fraudulent bills of lading coverage. You kind of outlined this, Justin, at the start of our conversation. There is now a technology overlap for sure with shipping, right?
Right.
So, what used to be apples and oranges, if you want to talk about cyber and marine in the same breath, people would say, why? They have nothing to do with one another. Now there is an intersection, right? We've already seen examples of some of our adversary might be too strong a word, but we know that there are countries that are GPS spoofing or they're jamming transmissions, right?
Sure.
Ships don't know exactly what their positioning is, which can be potentially fatal, right? If a ship goes into rocks, goes into a bank in bad weather because they can't tell from their instruments where exactly they are, that has all kinds of implications. And the reason it has more and more implications is we are seeing insurance companies slap on to marine products some type of cyber exclusion.
Right.
Not across
because of these
the board.
fraud schemes that target logistics and shipping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But often enough, and you'll want to know that just because technology had a role in the loss, you are not forfeiting all of your coverage. We're certainly seeing it with piracy claims, theft claims, right? We're seeing it on the roadways. Truckers are getting more and more targeted. So you think about, again, a truck that leaves a warehouse and it's got goods that have been shipped from an overseas voyage, right? There's an argument potentially that you've got federal marine law, maritime law applying in admiralty. Then what are the implications for coverage, even though we're now inland on a train, on a truck, on a trailer, and we're seeing more and more cargo theft in that realm of trucking, in addition to everything else we've already seen, right? Which is stuff missing at the dock, stuff broken into at a warehouse. So it's a very perilous situation for those dealing with cargo.
We will take one more quick break. I want to tell you about the openings and the deadlines for various Spencer Educational Foundation grants. The Risk Manager on Campus application period will open April 1st, 2026, and it will close on June 30th. Grant awardees, colleges and universities, are typically notified in September. Now let's talk about course development grants. The application deadline for interval number 2 will be on June 15th, 2026, and award notifications will be sent out in late July. General grants will open on May 1st, and the application deadline is July 30th. And internship grant applications open on August 15th and close on October 15th. Links to each of these grants are on this episode's show notes. And of course, you can visit spencered.org for more information. And now let's conclude our interview with Joshua Gold of Anderson Kill. All right, we are back with Josh Gold. He will be presenting a special session for us on May 5th at RISKWORLD called Do Not Let Your Cargo Claim Go Down with the Ship, Tips to Improve Marine Insurance Protection. As we said, he'll be co-presenting with past president of RIMS, Lance Ewing. And Josh, one of the things that I was thinking, if I was in the audience for your session, one of the questions that I'd be asking would be, if something went wrong with my shipment, I know that the actions that I take quickly are going to make a huge impact later on, particularly when it comes to whether a claim gets paid. What are the critical steps that risk professionals should take immediately after a cargo loss to preserve their coverage rights?
So great question. And, if you've ever dealt with insurance before, the first step always is to give prompt notice. It just complicates matters if the insurance company can argue that the notice was untimely. So the first thing is get the notice in. Will you have all of the information? No. Might you think that the situation isn't as bad as perhaps it could be, and therefore you rationalize not giving notice?
Right.
Our recommendation is notice is unlike wine. It doesn't get better with age.
Okay,
so
good.
Give that prompt notice first and foremost. And then, like everything, right? Support your claim, get as much evidence as you can. Photographs, video evidence, documentary evidence. Gather that as quickly as you can. Give it as much as you possibly can to the insurance company, and let that claims process unfold in a prompt manner. You don't want the insurance company delaying payment because they say, well, we didn't get the information we needed to process the claim. So try and give them that information.
Can you add more documentation and evidence after that initial communication?
Absolutely. So, one trick of the trade, I'm not sure it's always necessary, but you can always indicate to the insurance company that here's the information we have to date. In the interest of time, we want to get it over to you, answer questions. And of course, we reserve the right to supplement this information because, for instance, your loss could be ongoing, right? You don't know the final amount of what your harm is yet. You may have preliminary estimates. You may have to do some kind of forecasting. You may be reading the tea leaves. You may be in possession of just partial information because you're not the captain of the ship. You don't know perhaps where that ship has had to be rerouted or what the harm is because you haven't been able to do a physical investigation of either the ship itself or perhaps the cargo or the cargo containers. So a lot goes into that, but really you want to move the information forward, share information. And, if there are deadlines built into your policies, and there surely will be, I mentioned the suit limitation clause before, but just start going through your policy, seeing if you have to calendar any dates for a proof of loss, a statement of loss, getting certain claim information in to the insurance company. Do that, make sure it's in the calendar, and hit those benchmarks as often as you can.
So what are you saying? Maybe the first 24 to 48 hours, just start communicating with the insurance company with as much as you have at the moment. And then, like you're saying, supplement from there. I would think 48 hours would be the longest you should go, right? it's not like a cyber claim where you got to wait 4 days.
Right. And even with the cyber claim, you know, there's no reason to hold back there, because in a cyber claim, you're incurring money from the get-go with your forensic team and your breach coach. Similarly, in the realm of marine cargo, again, I would give notice as quickly as you can, even if it's not as robust as anyone would like. That just may be, the circumstances you're under. So yeah, no, if you can get notice off as soon as possible, I don't think 48 hours is a deadline per se, but, again, if you can give the notice promptly, enlist your broker's help as quickly as you can. Every situation obviously can be different. So there may be, certain circumstances where you're still accumulating very rudimentary information. Maybe, you have to wait a few days, but if you're in possession of the information, get your insurance policy out, look at the notice provisions, get your broker on the horn. Brokers are a great way to submit insurance claim information. The broker should be helping guide you. Right. You've already paid for them, either in part of a commission or a fee. So enlist their help at the outset.
And if I'm a risk professional, how quickly do I tell executive leadership? Immediately also? I mean, you're going to have to, right? You don't want them to be blindsided by the media or anything like that.
No, I think you do want to have a conversation. And I do think one of the nice things that I've watched over the past few decades with RIMS is that it's an organization that finally has gotten the recognition it deserves within the C-suite, that, right, having a risk management approach and having it be systematic and scientific is really, really important, and that there should be a dialogue. Obviously not every risk manager is at the C-suite level, but at a minimum, they usually have, entrees into the treasurer's department, the CFO, perhaps the law department, again, depending upon the organization.
Yeah.
But yes, I think expectations should be set. Communications internally are important. You can have your law department on those communications just to make sure that, privilege is protected and people aren't, having certain early conversations being exploited if there's ever a conflict over the coverage. But yeah, I think having action and having the risk management department have a good open dialogue with law, with finance, chief operating officer, and obviously, depending upon the situation, it may be that the CEO absolutely needs to be involved because, it's that important a loss or a potential loss.
Gotcha. Now, I don't want to ask all the questions because I want attendees at RISKWORLD to do that. Are you going to build in time during your session to take questions from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lance and I, having been on RIMS presentations, both at the chapter level together and RISKWORLD at the national level together, love getting questions from the audience. So we will be doing that. We will build in time for that. But more importantly, if anyone's watching this and then shows up in person at RISKWORLD, which we hope you do, don't even wait for us to finish. We would love to take questions on the fly. And both Lance and I believe that if we spend half of our time in a dialogue with the audience, that is time very, very well spent.
Excellent. Now, Josh, how long have you been practicing as a lawyer?
Okay, so I'm horrified to say it's been 31 years. And I've been almost with Anderson Kill 31 years in our New York office. It's
oh wow! So you've been
blink and you miss it.
Yep.
But yeah, no, it's I've been plying the insurance coverage trade for decades now.
So almost since day one, you've been with Anderson Kill.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. Yep. So this episode is being released March 31st. 2026. And on May 1st, it is Law Day, which is recognized by the American Bar Association, which I'm sure you're a member of, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. And Law Day is an annual commemoration held on May 1st to celebrate the rule of law and cultivate a deeper understanding of the legal system. I totally memorized that line. So what does Law Day mean to Josh Gold, who's been practicing for 31 years?
Well, I couldn't have put it any better than you just did in reciting its significance. Just as a lawyer, I will say we're always happy to get some kind of positive acknowledgement. Not everyone wants to celebrate lawyers, whether it's May 1st or any other day of the year. But we'll take any accolades we can get, any recognition, and any special day. It's not as big as President's Day, but we'll be satisfied with it.
Excellent. Yeah, this year's theme is the rule of law and the American dream. The rule of law, the idea that no person is above the law, is what ensures the rights of the people to live their lives as freely as possible and to pursue their dreams. Is that something you can get behind?
It seems like a good doctrine as far as I'm concerned. So yes, I'm a full supporter.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it has been such a pleasure to see you again. Like we said, you are a regular contributor to Risk Management Magazine. We have links to some of your articles on this episode's show notes. We're going to see you May 5th at RISKWORLD in Philadelphia. We're going to have all that information on the show notes as well. Is there anything else you want to say to the global risk community before we let you go?
No, please show up on Cinco de Mayo. We're speaking the afternoon of May 5th. We'd love to see you down in Philadelphia at RISKWORLD. And Lance and I are really looking forward to hearing your questions and being able to talk about marine cargo and weave it into what's going on May 5th.
Well, on a separate and slightly personal note, you've been very supportive of me and of RIMS, and you've always lent a hand on. I remember very clearly, I believe it was 2021, where we had somebody drop out of a cyber panel, and you and Bill Passanante stepped right in for us. So I've always felt a strong connection to you and the folks at Anderson Kill, and you're true professionals, and we sincerely appreciate you. Thank you so much.
So appreciate that. It's reciprocal, and Justin, thanks for all you do at RIMS.
Special thanks again to Anderson Kill shareholder Joshua Gold for joining us here on RIMScast. I have links to his contributions to RIMS Risk Management Magazine on this episode's show notes. And of course, if you will be at RISKWORLD, remember to attend his session on May 5th at 3:30 on the global stage. It is called Do Not Let Your Cargo Claim Go Down with the Ship, Tips to Improve Marine Insurance Protection. It will be co-presented with RIMS past president Lance Ewing. Register at rims.org/riskworld today. And now I want to speak about a topic near and dear to my heart, sponsorships. You can sponsor a RIMScast episode either on our publicly facing weekly show, that's this show, or with a dedicated episode. RIMScast has produced special episodes for JB Boda, The Hartford, Alliant, Zurich, Highwire, AXA XL, Prudent Insurance Brokers, High Trust, and Aon. Links to sponsored episodes are on our show notes. RIMScast has a global audience comprised of risk and insurance professionals, legal professionals, students, business leaders, C-suite executives, and more. Let's collaborate and help you reach them. Contact pd@rims.org for more information. Let's talk about RIMS membership, folks. Become a RIMS member and get access to the tools, thought leadership, and network you need to succeed. Visit rims.org/membership or email membershipdept@rims.org for more information. And let's also talk about Risk Knowledge. This is the RIMS searchable content library that provides relevant information for today's risk professionals. Available materials include RIMS executive reports, survey findings, contributed articles, industry research, benchmarking data, and more. For the best reporting on the profession of risk management, check out Risk Management Magazine, the Society's official monthly publication. You can find us on rmmagazine.com. It is written and published by the best minds in risk management. My name is Justin Smulison, Business Content Manager here at RIMS. Please remember to subscribe to RIMScast on your favorite podcasting app. Email us at content@rims.org. Practice good risk management, stay safe, and thank you again for your continuous support.